So the very last trig work that we're doing for this term, this is more revision than anything else, is heights and distances in one plane. So this has to do with the angle of depression and the angle of inclination. Okay, and the first example I'm going to work through with you is in your textbooks on page 316. So from a point on top of a building, the angle of elevation, the top of a nearby tower is 25 degrees, and the angle of depression of the bottom of the tower is 20 degrees. If the height of the tower is known to be 30 meters, how far from the tower is the observer? Right, so what I have here there is my 25 degrees. That's my angle of elevation. There is my second building bottom. Now what I need to understand is that the distance at the base and at the top between the buildings are the same, and then they said the angle of depression is 20 degrees. So all I need to know is that all of these angles are 90 degrees as well. So if they say the height of the tower, so that's if I had to label this A, B, C, so that means the height of the tower is 30 meters. So let's make that D and E, then we can work with it. Okay, so if I want to divide this up, this means if I divide it into A and B and I make that distance x, it means that B to C will be 30 minus x. Okay, because if I add those two up, it gives me the 30 degrees. Okay, so I can basically work in two, I'm going to move over here, two triangles here. So in terms of the 25, this is my adjacent, that is my opposite, and that is my hypotenuse. Okay, what I have, what do I want? It's A and O, so that is my tan of 25, and that is then going to be O over A, so it is x over D. So I can say x is D tan 25. Okay, in my second triangle, where I have the 20, this is the adjacent side, this is the opposite side, that is the hypotenuse. What I have, and where do I want to go to, is another tan. Tan of 20 is then opposite over adjacent, which means 30 minus x is D tan 20. Okay, that means I can say 30 minus D tan 20 is equal to x. Okay, so now I have two equations that represents x, but x is the same thing. So D tan 25 is equal to 30 minus D tan of 20. I'm trying to solve D. Okay, so that means I'm going to bring over D tan 20. I'm going to take out D as a common factor. and then I am going to divide both sides with tan 25 plus tan 20. Okay, so taking my calculator, 30 divided by tan 25 plus tan of 20 gives me D to the nearest meter is 36 meters. Okay, so that is the distance for D. All right, so if you do get a question like this is more grade 10 work. They don't like asking this in your senior papers, but you need to be ready to get it. It's exactly what you have been doing. This is seen as complex procedure or even problem solving. So just stay cool and calm and work through the problem as it is. Okay, the next little thing that we need to talk about, and we're only going to do one example, is something that you did in grade 9, and that is bearings. Okay. So bearings, you need to know your directions. Your north is always at the top. And bearings, you need to know you always start at your north and you move clockwise. So start at north and you work in a clockwise direction. Okay. Now for this question, you do need to have the appropriate measurement tools with you. All right. So I'm going to talk you through the example that is given on page 317. Okay. So a ship leaves a port, right, at 140. So in the example, the explanation, you can see they added your compass and they added the north and they measured 140 degrees and they made a little dot. So starting at the port, there it goes, and it sails 3 kilometers. The moment it stops, I'm going to put down my angles again, or not my angles, my direction again, and then 300, so measuring from the north, 300 degrees, I'm going to make a dot, and I'm going to pull my next line. Okay, for 2 kilometers. And then they say, find the distance and the bearing of the ship from the port. Round your answer to 1 decimal, and then bearings are angles measured in clockwise direction from due north. So what they've done is the following. They said, as that is 140 degrees, I know angles on a straight line is 180. So that bit is 40 degrees, like you can see, supplement of 1. So P1 and T1, because those two lines are parallel from one another, and those two true north lines are parallel from one another. So those are alternate angles. So P1 and T1 are alternate from each other. So T1 will also be 40. Now, if I have 40 degrees and I have 300 degrees, it means that T2 is only 20 degrees because it's angles around a point. Okay. Now, if I have an angle and I have two sides, so an angle, a side, and an angle, I can use the cosine rule. Okay. And I can calculate side P, S, or T. So T squared is equal to S squared plus P squared minus 2PS cos of 20. So there you have the calculation, and PS works out to be 1.3 kilometers. Okay, So what are the basic things that you need to know from bearings? Because I can ask you absolutely anything. Every time you move in a different direction, you need to put down your true north. What I need to realize is that the true norths are always parallel from each other. But also, I will have my west and east directions, I will have parallel from each other. So whenever I have one connecting to the other, I will always have alternate angles playing. Okay. And then always remember that if I have a side, an angle, and a side, that is the cosine rule. And then after the cosine rule, I can use the sine rule. And if necessary, I can then move to the sum of angles in a triangle. Okay, so for the last just exercise, you are going to look at 11.8, number 1, 3, and 4, and then that concludes your Trig syllabus, basically, and your term, where are we now? Term 2 work. So we can start with revision.